Alvin, just solve your PowerPoint problem.
Yeah, you know what I did, Ken, was to delete the slide where the music started and reconfigure it. I just came to that discovery, I'll call it, like 5 minutes ago. But, because there was nowhere in the directions, of course, that how to fix an obvious flaw in their system. But
Well, they're perfect, so why should they give you fixes?
right, but also remember what you told me, what the Microsoft representative told you. You want to repeat that before we get started? What the Microsoft told
Oh, what he said, he said our customers prefer features rather than bug-free software.
Yeah.
hear that. What was the context?
Well, I told him that I had been in charge of a software department, and
And you're at a convention, or
yeah, I met an executive from Microsoft at a convention about, I think it was a CEDIA show, maybe around 15 years ago or so. And we're just chatting, and I said, so certain obvious bugs I find in your software. Well, why don't you clean them up? And he said, well, we think our customers prefer rolling out new features as quickly as possible than they do us working on bugs.
Wow.
yeah, that's scary.
Now, this was before the scandal on their lax data security occurred. Then they claimed they rolled up their sleeves and did a better job.
Yeah. Well, unless you can hold corporations to some standard, not within their own walls, they seem to get away with whatever they want until they get sued or something like that. Okay, I'm ready when you are, Nick.
Okay, let me see if I can do this. I want to share one thing. But let me, there we go. Okay, now see if I can do this here. Can everybody see that?
Now we can, yeah.
That is the Best Buy music section.
Oh my God. What? Are you talking about music and videos or just?
That is all the music that you can buy at my Fitchburg Best Buy.
Did they announce that they were going to stop selling CDs?
Maybe. I mean,
yeah, they announced that last week.
What did they announce?
They're getting out of the CD and DVD business.
By DVDs, do you mean video at large, or they still have a decent selection of let's say videos? I mean,
Blu-rays, Nick, you mean?
Blu-rays and 4Ks, certainly. I didn't look for particularly at DVDs, so I don't know about that. But I hadn't heard that they were going to be dropping CDs or DVDs. So I thought that was funny.
Yeah, it just reminds us of, because we're all old, we remember the days when Tower Records was booming and a lot of other things, and video was just sort of in the background, and audio was big, and there were 50,000 people belonged to the Boston Computer Society. And around that time, we had as many as 2,000 belonging to the BAS. Apparently, the market decided to leave audio and go toward video, with anticipated increased sales in multi-channel sound. Loudspeakers would multiply, amplifiers would multiply. I'm not sure if that happened or not, but we do know it wiped out a lot of audio stores.
Are you saying BAS membership peaked at 1,000?
Over 1,000.
Maybe closer to 3,000. I don't know.
Yeah, It was pretty high, right around the same time that do your own thing with computers. Commodore was big, early Apples were big, and there were a few other brands out there.
So this was around 1980.
70s.
70s, yeah, probably closer to the 70s, because I think I was still in school at the time. So early 70s, yeah.
One.
But the world moved on or something like that, and left audio behind, left computers behind, and everything got moved, I guess, to buy it out of China or Korea, and don't do your own thing, I guess. I don't.
Another thing I noticed, I was surprised by this as well. I went to Newbury Comics. They didn't have any video stuff.
Huh?
No DVDs or Blu-rays or any of that kind of stuff. They had vinyl and CDs and a lot of comic books and I don't know. Holy cow. Well, all I can say is Best Buy still gets new Blu-rays and UHDs in, and their section has expanded a little bit since what I remember. Maybe it's just a holiday thing, but I could imagine they would have that belief that, media is going to go away, but, media is the best experience you can have, I think. It's better than streaming.
Well, the best doesn't always win in the marketplace.
True.
Well, there is high-end streaming services available that stream CD quality.
Wow, that's high end.
But that's not happening yet with video. Not the quality issue.
No, that's really not going to happen. I mean, a Blu-ray can hold 50 gigabytes. No one's going to stream that.
Well, it does get compressed. And, I don't know the loss ratios, so I shouldn't talk. Anybody else? Open forum?
I'm wondering, Nick, should we bring up our last meeting with Epson representative? Is this a good time?
Sure. What about it?
Most of you weren't able to attend because it was for in-person only, and it was held at our usual Lexington Community Center. And prior to that, John Halligan scouted out the multiple rooms available. And I'm glad to see he's back after his operation. Anyway, he chose a pretty good room. And David Hadaway arrived with most of the window darkening material. And we were able to make the room look pretty dark. So anyway, we proceeded with the meeting, and he had a lot of really interesting things to say. And I really enjoyed it. And the room was sufficiently dark. I left the meeting convinced that the Epson projector, the laser one for about $5,000, is a strong competitor in the $10,000 market. Jeff Pava admitted that it's not the JVC or the Sony of the world. It can't do the 2020 rec, for example. But up until that, it does everything else that wipes out the competition. And one of the items he mentioned was that if you have a laser projector, when the bulb burns out,
Light source.
dim, you just have to throw it away. The entire projector. There are no replaceable bulbs or lasers inside projectors any longer. And I said, none? He says, none that I know of. So there may be a laser bulb replacement system out there somewhere, but none of the well-known projectors are any good after the laser burns out or goes too dim. So I thought that was an interesting point.
Well, he mentioned, though, that the lifespan, the unofficial lifespan is 20,000 hours.
Right.
That's a lot of time.
5 years, 5 to 7 years.
Yeah, my projector has 3 lasers.
Right.
What does that mean, Richard?
It means that if any of them goes, I'm fucked.
Right.
But they have a huge life expectancy.
Well, what were you quoted for life expectancy?
20,000, 40,000. I don't know.
Yes, it's the same number that
Yeah.
Epson quoted, except they have one big array of lasers, and then they split it to illuminate the primary color LCDs.
Right. And this one has 3 lasers, one for RGB lasers,
Well,
which have to be converged every time you turn on the projector.
What do you mean by that? You have to manually converge it?
Well, I'm using a remote control, but yes.
Because he said the Epson, you did not have to do that at all.
It only has one. It only has one laser.
No, it has 3 LCD panels.
There are 3 lasers.
Oh,
I believe there's one laser, and they use color splitting
correct.
to get the 3 primary colors out of it.
I didn't know they made a broadband laser. Usually they home in on just one frequency.
They do, but if you shine a laser on certain phosphors, the
Okay.
phosphors emit other colors.
Yeah.
And so I think they're using a blue laser, and they are generating the green and red out of it.
Yeah, that's pretty common in laser projectors to use phosphors to generate the colors.
Sounds
Sorry?
like going back to the old CRTs. Only it was electrons they used to use to illuminate the phosphors.
I had a G90. I started off with the G90, which was the Sony analog version of what's hanging up there with RGB. I went to the Hayden Planetarium, which was for the first time since I was a kid in New York, and they had G90s projecting most of the stuff on the ceiling.
Well, if it's any consolation about laser life, he says it's a hidden secret, but they won't mention it, that most lasers are good for 50 to 60,000 hours.
Yeah.
So, and he
That's a lot
says,
of years.
and you achieve that, but not running at full brightness, which no one does, because even my
No, I run it at about 40% output.
correct. So it should last much longer than 20.
And it doesn't make any noise at that level. Also, it doesn't heat up and blow the fan in the room.
I see. But he
And it's perfect, but it all depends on how dark you can make the room you're in.
Yep.
I see. Okay.
Richard, I have a question for you about the image generator of your projector.
Okay.
Is it a true 4K image generator?
Yes.
Yes.
It's not 8K, but it is 4K.
The Epson is a 2K generator with a flipper.
Right.
So it's a FAUXK generator.
Ha 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 ha.
What do
Very
you mean
good.
it's not full 4,000 plus? Yes, it is, Nick.
No, the Epson is a 2K LCD, but the image is shifted slightly to fill in. So it's like a film where you can't see, you merge it in your eye.
How many pixels result on the screen? I thought it was 4,000.
It's 4K pixels, but the
That's
way it's
cool.
generated is in 2K.
Okay.
It's kind of like interlacing.
Yeah. Okay.
I was going to say that's right.
I went up to the screen and looked at it very closely, and it had no scintillation the way some of the older DLPs did. That image was rock steady.
Yeah, this is not mechanical. This is all electronic.
Something has to be mechanical
Why?
to cause the image to shift by 1 pixel or half a pixel, depending how you look at it.
How does the Epson get focused? I mean, you still have to focus it on the screen at a certain distance from where the projector is.
Yes, he lined it up. Preparatory to showing us stuff, he lined it up and focused it, and used a white sheet of paper and told us the right way to do it and all that kind of stuff.
Now, I did see at CEDIA and RCES that there was a Chinese company that had an autofocus projector. So if you literally hit the side of the projector and the image moved off screen, it could automatically readjust itself, correct the keystone, etc.
Everybody
Wow.
wants a wife like that.
Okay. He also said that the close projectors, which have become very popular and some people claim are leading in the market, that's where you put a projector roughly a few inches from your wall or from the screen. He claims that their picture will never be as good as a full throw projector. Let's say, like
It's called short throw versus long throw. So what Alvin and I were discussing that claim. Does anyone have evidence that short throw, because of its complex optics, can never match long throw?
Yeah. How does the light go around the corner? I don't quite get that. But
It just aims up to the screen.
it aims up. Oh, from
Yeah.
the bottom. Oh,
It's sitting a few inches below the screen,
Below
a few
the
inches
screen.
away from the screen, and it's throwing the image up.
oh, that's good. That makes sense.
The optics get pretty crazy though, and the big issue then becomes, okay, you get color aberrations if the lenses aren't, high precision, high quality lenses. Because you'll get halos and other stuff because the light speed through the lenses, especially around the edges of the lenses, will tend to diffract the light and break up the light into its primary colors.
Wait a minute, is David Satz? David Satz is on the call? And that looks like
Yes, sir.
That looks like the Zeiss stereo opticon projector that was in the Hayden Planetarium when I was a kid.
That is the one that was in the Buell Planetarium when I was a kid in Pittsburgh.
Wow.
But you're exactly right. It's a Zeiss 2.
what is it? I missed it.
Planetarium projector.
Oh,
That could do the Milky Way really well.
Hmm.
I used to go there every month with my friend. Would go from New Jersey into Manhattan to go and watch the monthly show at the Hayden Planetarium every month. Had some of my first sexual experiences there. It was really great.
It's really inspiring. I think this machine influenced me to go into science more than any other single thing I can point to.
That's great.
I remember
That
that.
David?
Yeah.
Hi, David.
Hi, Richard.
Haven't seen you in 50 years.
Okay, well, I'll put my face back on the screen then.
I'm glad John Allen is on board because the last half of our meeting presentation will include the tour of the David Geffen Hall in New York City, which is a brand new building. They keep reminding us, and not the old Avery Fisher Hall.
It's a reimagining.
It's a reimagining,
No, it's a rebuilding.
a rebuilding. Okay.
Well,
Tore
It's a
everything out,
repurposing.
started over,
They gutted the
the interior.
entire inside of the building. The exterior is the only thing remaining that was original.
Cool.
last night I stumbled across a YouTube video by a guy named Steve Gutenberg, claimed to be an expert on loudspeakers. Who is he?
He's a man who claims to be an expert on loudspeakers.
Wasn't he an actor in like the Breakfast Club or
No,
something?
no, it's a different person.
No, he said he wrote for hi-fi magazines.
Yeah.
He did.
Yeah, he did something that he wrote something and I responded to it one time and he ignored me.
That takes care of him.
Well, he was writing about something that I knew about and he didn't, and I was telling him.
That always helps. There's a lot of that People write about all the time things that they think they know about that I know about.
So Ken Wax, why'd you ask?
Well, he said he's been in audio his whole life. He started as a salesperson at an audio store, and he did a video on what he claims are the 10 best loudspeakers. I thought that was a bit presumptuous, but
Could we get him as a BAS guest? Do you have enough contact information?
I just told you everything I know. His name is Steve Gutenberg. Go look for him on YouTube.
I wonder if it's Tue Nov.
Oh, okay. Now cut that out. The question is, there may be one or two T's, Al. So don't
Yeah.
give up if you.
I believe it's two T's. That's a name I know somehow, and I think it's two T's.
Okay, I added the second T in there.
BERG.
Okay.
Could I ask a favor?
Certainly.
Could we do the Geffen Hall thing now? Because I have something that I have to go to.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay. Okay. My last part of my presentation, which is about 8 minutes long. So the last 4 minutes roughly are devoted to the hall. So what do you want to do, Nick?
Let John Allen go first.
Okay, so let John Allen just speak and we'll go through and
I
So
don't
why
know.
was the Geffen Hall gutted and rebuilt?
okay, John, you're on.
Well, Lincoln Center was built in around 1960.
Yep.
Leo was the acoustician who was hired to design the hall. His goal was to do an acoustic copy of Symphony Hall.
Leo Baranek, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
That was his goal. That's interesting.
Well, because he was basically blocked. The architect was a man by the name of Abramowitz, and Abramowitz would not let Leo talk to the owner at all, ever. Leo was only allowed to talk to the architect. He designed a hall that was what he considered to be an acoustic copy of Boston. It had fewer seats than Carnegie. Forget how many, 300 maybe. And the New York press thought that that was horrible. How could you build a hall with fewer seats than Carnegie? And as a result of that, Abramowitz took the job away from Leo and designed his own hall, basically, to the point where Leo walked into the plan room one day at BVN and looked at what they were talking about and said, "Which hall is this?"
Oh.
And anyway, they ran out of money and they stripped away a lot of diffusion, and
Who took
building
over the
committee kind of took
design
over.
from Leo Baranek?
Say again?
Who took it over? The architect?
Abramowitz.
Uh,
Yeah, the architect. And so there was a building committee that decided, well, this is how much money we have to spend, and they stripped out a lot of stuff, and they just basically made smooth walls and painted them blue. And of course, when it opened, it was terrible. I don't know if it was as bad as the hall in Hamburg, where people are standing up and screaming, "I can't hear you." But
In German, I'm sure.
yeah,
German, right?
it's true. I mean, there are conductors and performers that have said, "I will never perform there again." I don't know if it was that bad, but it was bad. And so they tried to fix it a couple of years later. At one point along the way, Leo, who kept trying to help, finally wrote a letter of resignation and said, I will have nothing to do with this anymore.
Was
That-
this the original design with the floating islands
I don't know about that. I don't think so.
where Leonard Bernstein did his children's concert?
I don't know.
That was
I don't know.
before, though. I don't think that was. I think he was gone by then. By the 60s.
Yeah, I don't know whether a young person's guides were done. I don't think that they were done at Lincoln Center somehow.
Most of them were, and they were done in the original Philharmonic Hall, and they did have what were called acoustic clouds in the ceiling.
Okay.
And it was intended that the clouds were movable and tiltable, and that was one of the design elements that got stripped out in the budget cutting process.
So they built, they did a modification. So the modification was the second basic hall, and they put in a lot of movable, aimable panels in the ceiling. And from what I'm told, it was actually a pretty good improvement, but it still wasn't satisfactory. So several years later, Avery Fisher donated a whole lot of money, and they hired Cyril Harris, and he designed what became Avery Fisher Hall. I was only in Avery Fisher Hall once, and I sat down front, and I thought the sound down front was pretty good. I was with Marty Nixon. They were running West Side Story with the orchestra, and so we were all seated down front, like the 7th or 8th row or something like that. I thought the room was too wide when I looked at it. Had 3 tiers and no real hard cap. The thing about the hall that was shocking to Chris Blair, who designed this new one, was that the walls were 3/4-inch plywood with nothing behind it. So you had this giant bass absorber
Right.
of a room. And so sometime, I would say, it was when we had Bill Busick's party at Symphony Hall, and I took Leo home. And he told me, this was back in the 90s, he told me that they were going to redo this hall again. He was in touch with them. They did not need the 3,000 seats because they weren't selling them, so they could put in a smaller hall. And this went on for, years, just 20-some years, trying to raise the money. David Geffen gave him $100 million. The budget turned out to be $550 million. I was
$500 million.
$550 million.
Right.
I happened to be in Nashville several years ago for the season closing concert. There's several plans. One of the plans was to take the orchestra to Phoenix or someplace for 3 years. And the orchestra Deborah Borda came back from Los Angeles and took over as president of the orchestra. And she just did not want to do that. So then they thought they would lose their audience and they would never get them back. So the plan then was, this was before COVID, the plan was to do the job in stages during the summer. And when COVID hit, the one damn good thing about COVID was it gave them the opportunity to do the entire thing all at once, which is what they did. And I saw some plans as they were going along, and it looked like a very interesting room. It didn't look like a room that I was sort of familiar with. And I said to Chris, "Are you sure about this?" He said, "I designed it. Of course I'm sure." What I didn't realize was that they were designing a room with enormous flexibility. Some people might call it a multi-purpose hall. I said when we were at the tour that multi-purpose halls generally don't serve any purpose really well. But this hall was designed as a concert hall, first and foremost, with 2-second reverb time, and has curtains and other things that can be brought in to reduce the reverberation time down to 1.3 seconds. I would have to say that New York finally has the kind of concert hall that Leo wanted them to have, which is really nice.
How does it compare to Carnegie?
Carnegie sounds I've never sat in the upper section of Carnegie. I have sat in the lower, the floor section, and Carnegie sounds to me a lot like Boston. It's a very fine hall. It's not rated as highly as I think it should be, but it's a very fine hall. But it's a different sound. It's all concert halls sound different. It's like guitars; they all sound different, but they're guitars. And this hall has great clarity. I think that younger audiences, particularly, are going to like this hall because of its clarity. So anyway, we had what's called a hard hat concert, which is where all the construction workers and their families are invited. So the place was packed, and this gives us a chance to hear the room with an audience, which is very important. And they played a whole lot of things. A couple of things, they sounded a little too bright, but that was the orchestra. Everything else sounded fine. And before the concert, I asked Chris, I said, well, what are they going to play? And he said, well, I don't know. It's not a very sophisticated audience. And I thought, Star Wars. And it was not on the program, but it was the final encore. And I can tell you, I know John Williams' music pretty well, and I know John Williams, and we all know that his orchestrations are very complicated and very rich. And I heard details in that music that I had never really heard before, that no recording could capture. The sound in that hall is just absolutely gorgeous. And I think people are pretty happy. One thing I should mention is that Chris and Paul spent a tremendous amount of time in those 4 days adjusting the ceiling panels over the orchestra and sitting with the orchestra, because they wanted the orchestra to be able to hear themselves. And those panels, I mean, they would be adjusted, maybe tilted 1 inch, and it would make a huge difference. And I wasn't involved in that at all. I didn't sit on the stage. I was out in the hall. And it was just a fascinating, the whole thing is fascinating. I forget, I've been to another concert there as well, and I forget what it was, but I just love it. And they did Pines of Rome. And that was, of course, that's a big thing where they have musicians out in the hall, and it was just beautifully done. One of the things, when I listen to a hall, one of the things that I listen to when they're tuning, I listen to the oboe and I listen to the flute. And because the hall adds so much sound to the hall is an instrument in and of itself, and it adds so much sound to those instruments. And it's a good way to hear if the hall is supporting them or changing them. And I say this hall this New York hall is really, really clear. The reviews have been good. But as I said at the end of the tour, it takes years for a hall to really get its reputation. I mean, Boston was not liked when it opened. And they didn't have enough musicians in the orchestra to really fill it. And it wasn't really appreciated until several years later. So we'll see how it goes. I am optimistic. I think that just like Nashville, this is another success story for Chris and Paul. And but it's a somewhat different kind of sound in that the clarity is so good and the bass is so good. And but look at that video if you haven't seen it that David sent out, and see the flexibility of that stage. That the back seats behind the orchestra can go away, and the stage can be made flat and deeper. It can be extended out into the hall, and seats removed, and seats brought back in, and the stage shrunk a bit. I mean, it's very flexible, and all the risers are on hydraulic lifts, so they can be flat up to on different heights, different grades. It's just an amazing place. And
This video,
urge
John,
any of you to go to a concert there. Say that.
This
Again?
video that David Weinberg has? or-
Yeah, I think was it David Weinberg that sent it out yesterday or somebody else? Anyway, I got an email yesterday. It's a video. We had it at the tour. It's online and you can watch it.
Yeah, I'm the one that sent it out, John.
Oh,
Alan.
you are, okay.
Yeah, I went looking also to see if I could find that historical video that was part of your fabulous presentation the day before at the AES conference, but I couldn't turn that one up. So you said I went on the AES site and everything to look for a history of it, and you know they didn't even have the I don't think they had the write up at all on it. No, nothing, no videos yet. From
No, not yet.
they have
It
a handful
was
from
video
2023.
recorded and it'll be available probably in a month.
Yeah.
And I'll put it on my website.
So
You-
Al,
YouTube
are you
channel?
prepared to show that video today, or how long is it? Or
It's about a minute, 2 minutes long. It's, I think, a minute 54 when I looked at it. And it's one of those things, it happens pretty progressively. I guess, I don't know who did it. It was on Vimeo, but it shows, and it was the one that was shown at the panel discussion that John had. And you may want to watch it a couple of times. I sent you guys the link, but I'll be glad to post it again. But it shows the various setups of the hall, although it doesn't show some of the side curtains and so forth. They have ways of damping it, as John mentioned, and knocking a whole second off the reverb time in that hall is a remarkable accomplishment. It's just very impressive that they can do that. But
Well, one of the things that you guys saw was that the lobby is open during the day to the public.
mm,
And there's a restaurant there.
Yeah.
And this
And a
was
bar.
this was one of the things that Lincoln Center wanted to do. And this hall, the people who were building this hall, the orchestra, Lincoln Center, there were a lot of conflicting, shall we say, interests. And you know, it was a difficult thing to get done, but I think that the end result is fabulous.
Does New York have an audience comparable to Boston for classical music?
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah. One of the things that they also did with this open lobby, basically, it has a restaurant and a bar, but they are also, as I recall, John, aren't they opening it up for free for people to come in and watch a video on the large wall that's at the back of the entrance area?
Yeah, that was Deborah Borda's idea.
They're trying to see, you know, get the people in who may never have attended a concert there. And if they get enthusiastic enough, maybe they'll pay for a real seat inside the hall, which is, I think, a great PR adventure to do. The other
Or
thing,
just plain enjoy the music that they might
Yeah.
not otherwise hear.
the other thing that was amazing was, I guess they had of course the New York Philharmonic last year performing, but they also had a Bruce Springsteen rock concert in the place. I don't know what the response was on it, but it seemed from what
Bruce said it was the best place he'd ever performed.
So that says a lot right there about the flexibility. Because I know I can remember I can never remember his name, the conductor of the Boston Pops, making the comment, they brought in a rock band once to Symphony Hall, and he said it just blew it out. It was just so loud, and the reverberation didn't help, and it just really did a number on listening to rock bands in Symphony Hall, which they'll probably never do again.
Well, I had this has nothing to do with New York, but I was in New Zealand to do some theaters, and the guy that I work with is connected. We're in a town called Nelson, which is the northern part of the Southern Island. And there's a school there, and it has a concert hall. And the woman who ran the concert hall was very unhappy because they couldn't do rock concerts in there. And I was asked to go down and listen to it and make my comments if I had any. So we went down, and there were quite a few people walking around with us, and there was an organ, and they had a Hamburg Steinway on stage.
Ooh.
and the organ worked, and so, you know, they had somebody there to play those things. And I'm walking around this room. It's not a very large room. I'd say maybe 900 seats or something like that, I'm guessing. But it was beautiful. It's really beautiful. And I listened, and so I finished playing, and I went back and talked to the group. And I said, well, I have a recommendation. What is it? I said, don't do anything. You guys have a jewel here that there are people in the world who would just love to have a hall like this. Well, we can't play rock concerts here. Well, you're not supposed to, I said. You belong in another place. This is for live music, and it's absolutely gorgeous. And ultimately, they took my advice. There are rooms that are designed for different kinds of music, and you can't play rock and roll at Symphony Hall.
Well, John,
apparently Bruce knew what to do in a room like Geffen, because you don't have to play really loud. And I suspect he's enough of a musician to know what to do in a space like that. And he sounds like he had a great time.
John, my caution about multifunction halls is that eventually, let's say after 50 years, the people who knew which curtains to draw or which panels to twist would disappear. And the manipulation, therefore, falls into chance. Your take?
Well, we have one here in Vegas, also designed by Paul and Chris, Smith Center. Beautiful place, absolutely beautiful. And when the Cleveland Orchestra came to perform, Chris and Paul came out along with some other people, and they had me go along with them, because that was the first, major orchestra to play there. And we sat in different places in the first half and the second half, and I heard a problem, but nobody else heard, because nobody else sat where I was sitting. But they had a cloud in front of the proscenium, and which was removable. And I felt that cloud was reflecting, causing a bad reflection from the front half of the orchestra. The back half of the orchestra sounded fine, but the front half of the orchestra did not sound good. And so I believe that they no longer use that for symphony things. But I would have to say that they do things like, they'll put a dome in these rooms, and above the dome will be acoustically transparent, and they'll have variable absorption above the dome. And they did that in an opera house. Can't remember the name of the college in Nashville. They did a brand new opera house there. It's gorgeous.
Vanderbilt, perhaps?
No, it begins with B, and I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. B as in Benson. But anyway, there are all kinds of variable things that you can put in halls today that can vary acoustics and tune rooms the way you want them. Nashville has it. Boston does not. Of course, New York and Las Vegas has it. What they do with Boston, the only difference is that I think that we have from Sabine's Hall is that there are some RPG diffusers on the back wall underneath the first balcony, if you look at that. And for pops, the reverberation time goes way up with pops, and so they bring in some curtains that they hang on the wall. And if you're sitting in the front half of Symphony Hall for pops, it's pretty good. But
John, have you noticed that Symphony Hall sounds different when that front stage extension is put in, and everybody sits in front of the proscenium? I thought it was awful. I couldn't stand it.
The first violins have nothing around them, and they sound dry and bright. So I sat in row N for 40 years. And I am now in row T. Because of the.
T au point.
Huh?
Well done is roti au point, as they say in French. Roti, roti.
Yes.
Little joke. Roti in French. Never mind. Moving right along.
T is
Bien
in Tom.
cuit, bien cuit.
Huh?
Even among sophisticated Bostonians, that's a little over the top.
I just went to college, that's all.
Well, Steve O'Ades, have you had a chance to hear the new hall? Is he there? I see his name.
I'm
Steve.
here. I'm here.
Have you had a chance to
I have not been to New York since the start of COVID. So I've not been in the new Geffen Hall. It looks promising, and the people I talked to who've been there seem to enjoy it.
You know, the orchestra has, because the hall is booked all the time, the orchestra has occasionally had to rehearse at Carnegie. And they come back to Geffen and they're very, very happy, much happier with Geffen than they are playing at Carnegie, which I thought was interesting.
That's big.
No, the orchestra is thrilled with this new hall. They should be. I mean, just think, walking in, I gotta tell you, when we were doing the tuning concerts, you know, I was staying at the hotel across the street, and every morning I was walking to work, as it were, through Lincoln Center. And I can't tell you what a nice feeling that was. How, you know, honored I was to be there. Such a beautiful place. Absolutely beautiful. There are, by the way, one of the things that was discussed, Al will tell you, is that they are going to modify the Metropolitan Opera House. As I said, when they built Lincoln Center, they ran out of money. And the Metropolitan Opera House lobby was shortened. And they are going to extend that out and put in more space in the lobby. That's another one of the major projects at Lincoln Center that's going on. So the panel was great. We had Chris and Paul, the acousticians, two of the architects, the project manager from Lincoln Center and the project manager from the New York Philharmonic. I thought they did a tremendous job. I asked for 2 hours. They gave me an hour, and I said, no, I need 2. And so we settled on 90 minutes. So in the conference call before the meeting, I said, look, we're done. We don't really have enough time to do this. The last time I did this, we did 2 hours and we ran over. And so we had 90 minutes, and I said, you know, we've got 6 people to talk, and so each one gets 10 minutes. And they each did a presentation that was different from one of the others. Every one of them told a different chapter of the story. And I thought, man, this was really, really cool, because, you know, each chapter was as interesting as the others and didn't always have to do with acoustics of the room. It had to do with other things. It was just fascinating, that the story, and I was just really pleased with the panel, and we finished on time.
Yeah, that was an extraordinarily I would call it a well-oiled presentation. It was just phenomenal. They went through the whole history of the development that you covered over briefly. Then they dovetailed into some of the problems they had moving forward to try and gather first the money and then get everybody to agree on what they were going to do. And then talking about the actual design of the hall and the flexibility of the hall. It was just phenomenal.
I was very pleased. I had nothing to do with anybody's presentation. They were on their own. And when Paul, on our conference call, Paul went through the history that he showed you, only a more extended one, because he didn't have the time to do everything. But it was very, very clear that he wanted to pay tribute to Leo. And I was that meant I didn't have to do it, basically. And I was very pleased that he did that. Because Leo, you know, he was really stung by that whole episode. He called it, you know, his black day or whatever, black eye. And if you remember at MIT, when I had him on one of our panels, he was talking about it, and I said, I don't think that it's fair that you continue to, you know, blame yourself. And he said, well, because it wasn't your fault. And he said, well, the New York paper said it was. And I just thought what Paul did was really, really fine. I'm just sorry that Leo couldn't. We tried to get him to get down to Nashville. He just wasn't well enough. We were trying to get him a private plane, trying to do anything to get him down to Nashville, because he really wanted to. He should have heard that hall. And it was sort of interesting, just to digress a little bit. My involvement with Nashville was pure serendipity. I came home from a trip, actually a day early, and turned on Channel 2, and there was this concert from a hall that I did not recognize. I knew who the conductor was, Slatkin. I didn't know this hall, and during the intermission, they ran a video of how they had built this hall in Nashville. Beautiful, beautiful room. And I'm thinking, this is Baranek, this is Baranek, this is Baranek. All of his teachings were followed in that hall. I was planning to do this session. I'd already been named as chair of a session for the AES convention that year. And the unofficial title in my head of the panel discussion was "Architects Are Ruining Our Music." Because I had heard Dallas, not impressed. San Francisco, not impressed. In fact, I thought they made it worse when they modified it. And Disney. And Disney was the one that really upset me because, you know, it's such a beautiful building. And yet, you know, and they always sat me in the VIP section. So I only sat in really one place for the most part. But it doesn't have the sound that Boston has. It doesn't have the kind of sound that halls that are renowned, you know, have. It just doesn't have the warmth. And I was talking with Chris, came up to Boston. He had never really met Leo, and so we all went to the ballet one time. And during intermission, I said to Leo, sitting with Chris, and I said, you know, there are only 3 halls in your book that you rate superior: Boston, Vienna, and Amsterdam. He said, that's right. I said, Nashville's the 4th. And so when I saw this thing on television, I wrote to the president of the orchestra, Alan Valentine, and I said, it looks like you and your board got this one right. I'd like to come and hear it. I'm doing this panel in the fall, and I'd like to come and hear this. And so he said, please come. I'll give you all the tickets you want. I did not know Chris Blair at the time. Alan asked me later on, before I got there, do you know Chris Blair? And I said, no. He said, well, he knows you because Chris got his acoustics degree from MIT and his conducting degree from the New England Conservatory. And he used to come to our presentations at Framingham. And, but I didn't know him. So that was my introduction to Nashville, and it's absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous sound. They're doing the Mahler 10th next May. I will be there.
The whole thing?
The entire thing, the Derek Cook edition. Well, you guys should think about it too.
Ben Zander didn't take my advice the one time I offered it, which is that the 4th symphony should start with the song called Earthly Life, because the symphony ends with the song called Heavenly Life. And in Earthly Life, the child starves to death. And in Heavenly Life, at the end of the 4th symphony, the child is eating and everybody's happy. But and one recording of the 4th has some conductor starts off with the Earthly Life song. Oh, mutter, I'm starving to death. But, it's pure Mahler. So, but he
Well,
didn't.
Richard, it's a
he
good
didn't like
thing you're a psychiatrist. You'd never make it as a singer.
Oh, well, I used to. That's before I lost my voice. I mean, yes. I don't. The singer versus sewing machine, as far as I'm concerned. I don't know.
There's a very interesting side story to the Mahler Fourth that I found out. I don't know why, I was looking at the Deutsche Grammophon recording that Lenny did, and he had a boy soloist sing the soprano part. And I looked at the name of the guy and I said, oh my God,
It's
I think
Helmut
I know who
Wittek.
it is. It's Helmut Wittek, who is now one of the CEOs of Shep's microphones. And I saw him at AES and I asked him, and I said, are you the one on the recording? He says, yeah. I said, are you still singing? He says, no.
Puberty does a terrible job.
Well, he's had other pursuits in terms of making some of the best microphones in the world.
By the way, speaking of microphones, and I know this has nothing to do with the concert halls, but as some of you know, I've been doing the mixes of Ben's concerts for the last couple of years. And he did a Beethoven Seventh a month or so ago, and I couldn't believe the sound, and I didn't know. I thought, well, okay, it sounds great. They played great. But they told me that they've been experimenting with microphones, and those were Shep's, that they've been using Sennheisers up until now. And then they used Shep's, and then they used what used to be B&K 4006s, which Bill used at Symphony Hall, and I used at the ballet. But I had not heard Shep's. Jack Renner used them all the time, and I thought that the Shep's sounded just absolutely beautiful. It's just additional clarity, a much better top end. The thing about the 4006s is that they're pretty directional in the higher frequencies, even though they're supposed to be omnis. And I actually used that because the microphones in the pit at the Wang were just below the rail and just above the orchestra. And so, for instance, the left mic was right over the violin of the concertmaster. And if he played out, it sounded great. But if it was a full omni, and we put the windscreens on one time to make them full omni, he was screaming the whole time. So I could aim the microphone straight back to the left, and it picked up a very, very uniform sound from the string section that way. So I'm not sure that the 4006s are the best for Symphony Hall, but the Shep's really sounded great.
Yeah, I've got a bunch of the Shep's mics, the old CMC5s, but I also have a couple of B&K 4007s, actually one B&K and one DPA. And they're very similar to the 4006s, except they have a much smaller diaphragm. But they too, I noticed, have kind of I guess I'd call it the typical high-end rise, or it's a resonance rise up around 8 kilohertz, and it makes a lot of zing in some things when you get too close to them. The Shep's don't have that problem. They seem to have done something. I guess it's probably like the formula for Coca-Cola. They probably have a little guy locked in a room somewhere in the factory that knows just how to set the tension on the diaphragms to do it right. But they do sound fabulous. They're really an impressive microphone.
Well, Ben did a concert last night.
Oh yeah,
Bartók Third Piano Concerto and the Shostakovich 10th Symphony. I've got the files, and I have assembled them, but I haven't started mixing yet. And what I'm doing is basically using the main mics on the Decatree left, center, right, and then 2 hall mics. The balance that they're giving me on the hall mics is very, very, very good. What I'm discovering is that the center microphone, you got to understand, the center microphone is for balance. The center speaker is for clarity. And I have a center speaker. But I find that the level of the center microphone sometimes needs to be tweaked a little bit.
Which way?
Well, in order for me, I create a 6-channel file. Left, right, 2 centers, and left hall and right hall. The 2 centers are necessary because in order to mix them in mono back to 2-track, I have to have it, you know, mixed equally in both. And that raises the center 3 dB. A lot of, I've talked to Al Southwick about this, I think. Pan pots, when you're up into the 12 o'clock position, reduce the level 3 dB from what they are in full left and full right. And at the ballet, I always put the center microphone 3 dB higher than the pan pot would allow because I couldn't hear it otherwise. And so when I mix the center microphone and down to 2 channels, I'm automatically adding 3 dB to the center mic, and it's generally perfect. But every once in a while, it's not, and I have to bring it down maybe 3/4 of a dB or a dB, something like that. And it really depends on the setting of the orchestra and the way they're playing. But generally, these mics are, you know, I don't have to do a whole lot. With the Das Lied von der Erde, the tenor was strong and loud and no accent mic. I try not to use accent mics. And but she sounded a little distant, so I brought the accent mic in at -10, and it just brought her back to, you know, it didn't sound like she was accented, but it brought her presence up to where it should be.
I noticed Bob Ludwig is on. Bob, have you heard the new hall?
Say again?
Bob Ludwig. He's online, I noticed.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just curious if he heard the Geffen Hall, David.
No, I'm just waving to Bob Ludwig.
No,
It's great
no,
that
I
he's here.
haven't. Russ Ham surreptitiously recorded the 3 halls here in New York, or in New York, I'm up in Portland. And it was very interesting to hear the difference between the 3 of them. And for me, I like the new hall best on most things, although Carnegie was good too. So there you go.
Where are you?
Halls, what were the 3 halls, Bob?
Let me see. It's Carnegie, Geffen. Maybe it was just those 2. I'll have to go back and look and see if there was a 3rd, but just those 2. So
Numbers aren't what they used to be, you know. They don't add up anymore.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Numbers don't add up anymore. That's all.
Oh, I know.
We're just
Believe
too
me,
old.
I'm suffering from that.
Well, there's one thing I want to say, add to the discussion about microphones at Symphony Hall. A couple of years ago, when he did the Mahler 3rd, I was there for the rehearsal and was the guy out, the ears out in the room to balance the offstage and the voice choir and everybody. And they sent us this 50 mic mix that was just horrible. And so I said, just send me the mains, just the mains, and let's see what we have and see what's missing. And the mains picked up everything exactly the way I heard it in the performance. The offstage, the chorus, everything was, no accent mics were needed. And I thought that was quite remarkable. You know, you really can record a Symphony Hall experience. And
CRB just used 2 microphones. All those great recordings from the 70s, it was just 2 microphones, and they were great. And there was
It was 4.
The original microphones, when they went to stereo, were Neumann SM23s. I've got an article in the BS Speaker about the problems with those microphones and how they could be corrected. They went from that to Neumann KM83s, which were very good. Again, 2 mics. Then they added the
2 ears, 2 mics.
Well, no, then they added the 2 hall mics when they went to 4 channels, and they
Right.
kept those in, and because that actually does help nice. It does a nice job if you crack them in enough, and not too much.
But it's for the hall, not for the location of the individual instruments.
Yeah, it's back around row L.
Hmm.
You know, I remember one time I was there with a concert, and Colin Davis was conducting the Midsummer Night's Dream, and the woman I was with when they played the wedding march, the woman I was with turned to me. I was humiliated. And she said loud enough for several people to hear, "Someday, John." And
They'll play that for you.
and I asked Bill if he heard it. He said yes. So anyway, when they went to the B&Ks, they went to the center mic, which I would imagine Victor had also asked them to do, and I had asked them to do. And it took them a little time to get that dialed in where it should be. But I 3 mics is definitely the way to go.
One of the
I'm done.
One of the peculiarities, and I don't know whether it's
Thank you, John.
Yes, thank you very much, John. You did a spectacular job with the panel, and this was a very concise and direct discussion of it. But one of the things I've noticed with the symphony broadcast, and I'm not sure how much tinkering goes on once they put in the can, but the orchestra sounds reasonably good. I mean, I've got a little, I haven't really sat down and seriously listened on the full stereo system I have. But the audience applause sounds like it's coming from the other end of a 55-gallon drum. It is very,
well, they've got 50 microphones on stage.
Yeah.
50. The hall isn't there, and it's compressed. It's
yeah, well,
nothing.
There's a great.
Doesn't even sound like the Boston Symphony. It's
yeah. There's also a very good amount of phase interference going on between the various microphones, and that's, I think, what leads to making the hall applause sound literally, as I say, like it's at the end of a 55-gallon drum, or it's coming through a Leslie loudspeaker.
Well, one of the things I have
Very
to do with
strange.
Ben's mixes is turn down the applause
Hmm.
by 6 dB at least.
Yeah. Well, if you have mics out over the orchestra, I mean, over the audience.
Those mics get turned down 8 dB. Anyway, I'll be sending that out pretty soon.
Very good. Thank you. Did you record Ben Zander's 9th, the one that was at tempo? He played a 9th.
No. He and I have a lot of people disagree with him and disagree with each other about the tempo, Beethoven's tempos. And Ben went with me to Nashville a year ago for Giancarlo's Beethoven 9th. And, you know, Ben, the first time he did the Beethoven 9th at that tempo, I was there. He asked me what I thought of it. I said, very interesting. Don't do it again. He said, why? I said, because, you know, despite what a composer might have written, musicians can take liberties with that because they might be able to do something that's the composer hadn't thought of, and it might be better. So anyway, we went to Nashville, and the rehearsal was a fairly conventional, if you will, interpretation of the 9th. It wasn't fast the way supposedly Beethoven wanted it to be. And after the rehearsal, Giancarlo and Ben and I went out to dinner, and I sat there and I listened to these 2 guys argue about the Beethoven 9th.
Oh, great.
It was fantastic. And it wasn't a heated argument or anything like it. These were 2 extraordinary artists having a very serious discussion. And I'm sitting there and I'm just listening to this. And after the performance, we went into Giancarlo's office, and Ben was very happy with the performance. And I thought, wow.
Yeah, many, many moons ago, I was at a party or something after some concert or other. I don't even remember all the details, but Joe Silverstein was there, who was the first chair of the BSO. And he got into a discussion about things, and he made the comment while they were rehearsing the Beethoven Ninth one day at Symphony Hall, he just had to take a bio break and came back and sat down instead out in the hall. And I still remember him. I mean, this is a guy who at the time was at the top of his game. And he said, that was one of the most incredible pieces of music I've ever heard. And it was just spectacular to sit in the hall and listen to it, which seemed kind of unusual from a guy who'd probably played dozens and dozens of Beethoven pieces again and again and again, including the Beethoven Ninth. But of course, he was on stage most of the time sawing away on his fiddle, not out in the hall listening to what it really sounded like to an audience.
Gentlemen, more Dolce, please. Remember that?
Harry's book. A lot of stories. A funny story in that book. And they're doing the Schubert Ninth, and I guess Ostrovsky was his name, sat behind Harry, and every time they turned a page, he'd go, "Oh." And at the end, he'd say, Schubert wrote 2 symphonies, one unfinished and the other endless.
Nobody liked it when it first came out. You know, it wasn't played during his lifetime, but it got everybody laughed at it when it was among the first performances of it, because there was so much repetition. But it was just presaging Bruckner. I think this Schubert's Ninth is like Bruckner's 000.
Hey, do you guys have the Bruckner 8th that I sent out?
Yeah, I do. Yeah,
It's fantastic.
It's fantastic. 10-step.
Yeah, no, not 10-step. Ben Zander, both of them.
Oh,
Both of them.
If I could just say a thing or two, I've played in Ben's orchestras and, have known him for decades. I think he's a really good musician, and his convictions about the tempo in Beethoven came from the influence of Rudolf Kolisch, from the Kolisch Quartet from Vienna, who published an article in Musical Quarterly in the 1943 about the history of the metronome and Beethoven's relationship to it. I think the movement that is most refreshed or revised by following his metronome markings is not any of the fast movements, but the slow movement, the double variations. The main effect of following Beethoven's metronome markings is to remove this false layer of worshipful solemnity that is especially found in like Furtwängler's followers really seem to adore that. It's a Wagnerian affectation. And of course, Wagner was way later than Beethoven and had his own gloss on what that music was about. I don't know.
One of the things that during the dinner conversation between Ben and Giancarlo, and Ben had the score, and he says to Giancarlo, he points to the top of the page, it says 88. What am I supposed to do with that?
Yeah, well, there's wiggle room around those markings.
Right.
It's clear. I mean, that's a musician's job, is to do more than just be a typist. But it's when somebody yanks the tempi completely out of the realm of what the composer wrote, then, in my opinion, they should be allowed to do that, but they shouldn't put the composer's name on it because it's their composition at that point. And there's a certain range that makes sense. And if you get out of that range, then the character of the music is completely different. And a really good composer will often write music that can be played in a variety of tempi, and it will have a meaning at each of those different tempi. But the composer, well, just because that is true, just because it is workable in some musical sense to vary the tempo a lot, I don't know. That makes me profoundly uncomfortable because I tend to trust that the composer had the clearest idea of what the piece is meant to be about.
Ben Zander was very proud of doing the Mahler fifth adagio at double tempo, and made it sound very slow, even though he was playing it very fast. But it was light enough to actually carry your heart along, as opposed to boring you to death. So
Well, the Beethoven
Okay.
seventh that he did a few weeks ago, he played the third movement straight through, and I am used to conductors slowing down certain parts of that for, make it more dramatic, and I think it works. I've listened to Ben's a few times, and I can listen to it, but I prefer people. I prefer adding the drama. My taste.
Anybody have anything to say about headphones? There are new headphone, especially you, John, because you criticized me for listening to something on a headphone the other month. Headphones the new headphones are really interesting, and there's a sense of them being, of the sounds being around you, not inside your head, the way the new dynamics are working, and they're very.
Well, I have two problems with headphones. I like to feel the air, and I'm afraid of damaging my hearing.
Okay.
I'm going to turn 77 next Friday, and my
Happy
hearing
birthday.
is still like a baby's. I mean, I very, very cautious of doing anything.
Peter Mitchell kept
Envy,
cotton in
envy.
his ears all the time. He only took the cotton out of his ears when he was listening to music.
I fly with earplugs all the time.
They must have wings on them.
Years ago, I was on a flight that there were 3 passengers on the flight from Boston to Chicago. 3 passengers, and they still wouldn't move me up to first class. I just, but anyway, I had my analyzer with me, and I was, one of the flight attendants thought that was really interesting. The amount of low frequencies that's going around on an airplane is pretty intense. But you're not aware of it because, we don't hear low frequencies that way. But they took it up into the cockpit, and I said, just push this button and it'll freeze the, what it's reading. And so that was interesting. It's very noisy up there.
So are there any stats on the effects on the flight crew?
Of noise?
Yeah,
That's a good question.
Well, I'm sure there are.
They just
I
don't
mean,
talk about it.
it's a practical issue. Do airlines have to pay out for disability claims?
Well, one of the things that prompted them to stop smoking was the flight attendants were getting ready to sue them. That was one of the things, not the only thing.
So my professor at MIT, John Donovan, claimed he was instrumental in convincing airlines to stop allowing smoking.
I wrote him once.
Is this Donovan, the guy who
Yeah, the
taught
same
computer? I took his 6251 course.
The same guy, and the same guy who ended his life by being accused of murder.
I had no idea.
And
Okay,
ended
but-
his life?
No, his life was, I don't know if he ended up in jail or what's going on.
Oh my. He was
He
a
was-
wonderful teacher.
He's the first one who said he redid the Fortran compiler to accommodate all the spelling mistakes.
Well, I gotta go, guys, but it's been fun. Nice to see
Hi,
you.
this is Bob. I have to go as well, but I just looked up the recordings my friend sent me, and he has the same microphone he's been using for a long time, and he sits in the same basic seat in every auditorium, and it was the old Avery Fisher compared to the new Geffen compared to Carnegie. I knew there were 3.
Yeah.
Well, they're all very different. Carnegie's great, and Geffen is great. Avery Fisher Hall was never a great orchestra, never a great hall.
Totally agree.
All right, guys.
John, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, John.
All right.
Thank
take
you
care.
for your work.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
for your service.
And
Yeah.
thanks for the
Yeah,
presentation.
that's appropriate.
Richard and Al, and I'll be sending you the Shostakovich.
That'd be
concert.
great.
Great.
I'm not sure when I'm going to get started on it. I've been, again, this is off the record. The response from the audience was even more incredible because there were people that would not leave the auditorium for 10 or 15 minutes after the movie was over. The cleaners had to work around them because they were just so stunned at what they had heard. And
Were you playing walkout music or something
No.
at the end?
no. They just sat there in stunned silence. And it was very interesting to see that.
Fitting
The
testament.
movie grossed twice the next highest grossing theater, 7 times the national average, and played 4 times longer. So what Ed Plitt and I wanted to prove was that you put beautiful sound in a movie theater that's as beautiful as the sound of the film mix itself, which exhibitors do not do. But if you do that, the audience will respond. And the whole purpose of putting that system in there was to try to create a new business model for movie theaters. Unfortunately, Henry Plitt, Ed's father, sold the company before we could really do much more. So otherwise, we might have done a lot more.
Are there any
Recognized by
Blu-rays
this-
with your audio track?
Say again?
Are there any Blu-rays with your audio track for Fantasia?
I don't know about Blu-rays. I was told it was a DVD with both the Stokowski and the Irwin Costal performance. I did not know about that. And I looked on Amazon, I couldn't find it. But I'll tell you, one of the interesting things about Stokowski, if you read the Symposium on Auditory Perspective, it was the Philadelphia Orchestra that was used. And 7 years later, Fantasia Disney picked up on that and made Fantasound happen, and Leopold Stokowski was the conductor. When Costal was creating the new recording, there were some things that were very, very difficult for the musicians to play. And he had a fine orchestra. The string section was made up of concertmasters from other orchestras. And so somebody, maybe a cellist, came up to him and said, "Mr. Costal, I don't think we can do this piece here, this part here, it's too difficult." And Costal said, "Well, they did it 38 years ago." And that made them work harder and go back and finally get to it. Well, it turns out that they didn't do it 38 years ago. And that the Philadelphia Orchestra of 1940 was not capable of doing what orchestras can do today.
Wow.
Really interesting. The fact that it was Fantasia that we were able to use was incredible, because it was the first stereo movie, and now it's the first digital movie. And I
That's
thought
fantastic.
that was great.
I looked up New York Times review for the premiere of Cinerama in 1952. The reviewer was blown away by the sound and spent more time talking about the multi-track stereo than he did about the 3-panel film.
That's great.
Well, it was 5 speakers behind the screen and split surrounds in 1950, whatever.
Wow. I went to see 2001 when it first came out in Manhattan. And that was the incredible surround sound experience of all the apes chirping in the back.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that was all pre-digital, so there must have been some way of doing it.
Well, they had multi-track analog. I mean, multi.
Multi, right.
I mean, Apocalypse Now had 128 tracks.
Wow.
Yeah,
And that was more than they had to do some pre-dubs because they had more tracks than they had recording tracks. But there are films now with 800, 900 tracks.
Oh my.
Yeah.
But 2001 was the first new generation Cinerama, which was simply widescreen stretched. There wasn't 3-panel.
That, that was quite, that was the best experience till the beginning of Star Wars, where the spaceship comes from behind you and you don't see it on the screen for a couple of seconds after, as though it snuck up behind you and then it appears over your head. That was a great moment in theater sound.
Hey, did you guys happen to see Empire was on ABC the other
Almost
night?
4 o'clock.
Only on the East Coast.
Yeah. All right. I gotta go.
3:37.
Thanks, guys.
again, John.
Thanks, John.
All right.
Be well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Wowee, what a show.
Yeah.
Yeah, wait till you see the panel discussion. But I noticed also I guess it was Mitch Steiner put up the link for the
Yep.
video. And it's well worth watching, but as I say, it goes by so fast and shows all the changes that can be done to the hall. You really want to probably watch it a couple of times.
Where is it?
It's on the chat side of the Zoom conference. He put the link up there.
Okay.
At least I think you did, didn't you, Mitch?
You mean the
Yes.
I
Vimeo?
don't see it. I don't know how to. Oh, I see. I can scroll down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's about probably halfway.
Here's the Aaron.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, there's the soundtrack. That's great.
Yeah, one of the things that they've also tried to do is make all of Lincoln Center much more available to the public. It was kind of, I guess, initially, and in fact, there's a funny clip at the end of the video, which is taken from one of the dance scenes in West Side Story. And there's 2 stories behind that. One of which is they're dancing in front of a brick building, which was about to be demolished in the Puerto Rican community, which developed on the west side of New York, apparently. And they had gang members go around to all the members in the building to make sure nobody leaned out the windows to watch what was going on the bare ground below. And the other thing is, that's where Lincoln Center now stands, is on the demolition.
The area had actually been emptied of people, and Jerome Robbins got access before demolition.
Yeah.
So that there is that very sad story about Lincoln Center. In fact, the revival of West Side Story opens with a poster at Lincoln Center about the new Lincoln Center coming to replace the neighborhood. And then it becomes kind of profound. You realize these gangs are fighting over a doomed part of the city.
Yeah. Yeah, they displaced a whole bunch of people from Puerto Rico, apparently. That was brought out in the discussion that was had. I'm not sure it was in the panel discussion or in the presentation that was done at the hall.
But in the movie of West Side Story, they took out the Jew. They remade West Side Story, which was made by gay Jews, and they took out anything gay and anything Jewish. And
the original West Side Story was the East Side Story, the conflict between the Jews and the Irish.
Exactly.
They decided to redo the entire premise of the story.
Because Jews had weren't poor anymore.
Nick, I wonder if we should start.
Sure.
Okay, I'll start. I have a PowerPoint here, and I'll do a screen sharing. And not sure if we can outdo what just happened, but
right, it's tough to follow Beethoven.
It is, but anyway, Nick and I had the opportunity to attend AES in New York City on October 24th through the 27th. Actually, we only went on the 27th, and that was a Friday, to view mainly the exhibits, because Nick and I concluded that the earlier parts of the AES wasn't as good as it used to be, and only that it would be additional $300.
Did you do this on 1 day round trip?
Yeah, we took a bus up and a bus back and parked in downtown Boston at the bus station.
Which bus line did you take?
Greyhound. Anyway, we did that too because it would allow us to see the exhibits, which Nick and I wanted to see, and that's exhibit of all professional equipment. And it would also allow us to pick up the tour of Geffen Hall, which we've heard the discussion on. And of course, the tour is arranged by John Allen. This was the Genelec presentation, and what was unusual about it that it took place in the exhibit part of the convention rather than in the usual private rooms at the bottom of the exhibit hall. But Genelec has always had a very strong presence at AES, and this is the type of studies and stuff that they would present. And I put this up here because Mogami has also typically had a very strong presentation at all the AES convention, and it's considered one of the finest cables in the world. And what I found out too was that if you want a custom cable, Redco in Connecticut is among the best places, and they'll use any wire you want, but they typically use Mogami. Del Pro Audio was exhibiting simultaneously with AES in the past. They were still here, but AES last year had NAB, which exhibited all at the same time. This year, NAB left Thursday, so Nick and I didn't get to see much of the National Association of Broadcasters portion of the exhibits. And one of the exhibits that I found was interesting was using how they claim they can make glass serve as a pretty good sound barrier. If you're building a studio maybe, or if you want to redesign your home to be more quiet, which is important. I have a friend who lives on Park Avenue, and the noise inside his apartment is 50 dB, which is obscene. But
is that because of glass?
Is getting
well, they're claiming that you can improve it with glass. In other words, he already has windows, of course, but replacing his windows with windows that are more soundproof. However, after this presentation, which you'll see, I asked the guy, how many dB are we talking about? Because I really don't know much about the system, the STC system. He said probably about 3 to 9 dB, a difference when glass is used. Their glass, for example, soundproof glass is used.
Soundproof glass has 2 layers, though.
What's that?
Soundproof glass has to have 2 layers with a vacuum in between. That's the way they made them in recording studios, as I recall.
I don't know that it's a vacuum in between, but there is a separation, and an air gap works well too.
Okay. I thought it was a vacuum.
You're all the time.
No,
it doesn't just seem like it. You know what I'm talking about. If your home or business is in a high-density neighborhood or near a noisy freeway or noisy neighbors, if you've got these guys living on your block, or you constantly hear this, peace and quiet seems like an impossible dream. This affects your sleep, your work, your health, your stress levels, and the simple ability to relax. You can't ignore it anymore, and you don't want to move. But you've got to find some peace and quiet somehow. Did you know your windows are the worst culprit when it comes to sound? But simply replacing your windows is not the answer. In fact, replacing your windows won't make much of a difference at all. How about if you could soundproof your existing windows without replacing them? Now you can with soundproof windows. Create your perfect retreat away from all the noises. Soundproof windows are specially engineered to reduce noise levels 75 to 95%. We're the same folks who produce the highest rated noise canceling windows for the recording industry. But soundproofing windows isn't just for recording studios anymore. We've now adapted this technology to residential and commercial users everywhere. Soundproof windows will act as a sound barrier and eliminate your noise problem. A soundproof window is a custom-made second window placed behind your existing window that opens and closes just like your current one. There's no need to remove or replace your current window to eliminate noise problems. You'll get the same benefits of dual-paned replacement windows, plus several benefits not available with replacement windows. You can eliminate your noise problems and save money on your energy bills. The energy-saving and insulating properties of soundproof windows will conserve 15 to 40% or more, depending on your environment. They block UV light, protecting your furniture and artwork. Users find that the super quieting effect is an immediate stress reducer, allowing a whole new level of relaxation. Customers are amazed, and quiet seems like an impossible.
As you can hear, most of that is promotional, but
So that's basically half of a new window. The new window is now a double and triple pane, air gapped, filled with inert gases.
so your question is, what are they doing different?
They're giving you a retrofit option, which frankly is if you've got the money, it always makes sense to put in a new windows with new framing that's much tighter seal.
Yeah. Audio Technica is always at the exhibits, and this time they were was showing. And Audio History Library and Museum. The reason why I thought this was interesting, because a lot of people are getting older, and sometimes our wives don't know what to do with the equipment when we precede them and going to heaven. So anyway, Audio History Museum and Library is where a lot of equipment winds up, and he has been in charge, at least for the last two AES of the convention or of the museum. So you might want to consider them.
Where are they located?
I'd have to check that out. I don't
They're
remember.
in New York. I actually talked to Louis Mano about getting in touch with the Museum of Broadcast Technology. And the two guys are, I believe, now trying to get kind of together in terms of maybe sharing some of the wealth. I was up at the Museum of Broadcast Technology a while back, and they have about twice to three times the stuff now there that they had when we did the BAS tour a couple of years ago. And they're basically running out of room, and they are, looking for something to basically convert from a museum to also a library. By doing so, they get a better tax deduction from the state of Rhode Island, apparently. But additionally, they are just plain running out of space. There's all kinds of stuff that a lot of the television stations have just been saying, okay, we have to upgrade, so we're just going to give you all our stuff. And that's what they're doing. Unfortunately, they can't seem to turn off the flow of a gear that's coming into the Museum of Broadcast.
You said Rhode Island? I thought they were in New York.
No, the Museum of Broadcast Technology is in Woonsocket.
Okay.
We went there, didn't we?
Yes, we had a museum there. They took over an old bank, and in fact, they're using the vault as a tube storage space. They tend to try and resuscitate all the old gear. They've got working Ampex 1000, M1000 video recorders that we were recording on 2-inch tape, and a bunch of other gear, cameras, tube type cameras. They make a little money by renting gear out to legacy type movie productions that are looking at, oh, we got to make it original. So, you know, you can't put a 3-inch camera there. It's got to be one of these behemoths on the, you know, etc. The Audio History Museum is for audio equipment like old radios and other stuff. But again, it's legacy gear, and they are trying to make sure that all their gear is operational too. So it's quite an interesting effort. And as I recall, it is located in New York City.
Okay, PSI demonstrated their active base cancellation system, which Nick and I both found interesting. We have a demonstration here.
Yeah, so physics behind it.
Well, the previous
Microphones and amplifier. That's right. Yes.
Well, I gather the range is so narrow, it's almost useless. Is that only for one note?
It's on the white. It's a white band absorber, so it works until from 15 to 150 hertz.
I can't understand a word.
And the cost?
Yeah, for small rooms. I mean, this is typically the range. Yeah. So yeah, that's the idea.
And the cost?
So yeah, we have a demo box. So the absorber display face to design. And the idea is that we have a small room, which is the box, resonates at 48 hertz. So this is the size of the box. Okay. And we have a subwoofer exciting this frequency at 48. So I will play a sine wave, 48, and then we just enable and disable the device to hear the effect.
Can't understand a word.
Yeah.
He's talking in German, I think.
No, it's not German.
I apologize for that. I guess I should have used a little bit better filtering, but he went on to demonstrate it, and I thought we should.
Is it active? Does it receive a signal, or is it just sitting there acoustically?
It's active, which means it has. Nick, you want to explain it?
Sure. It's an active sound absorber. It has a microphone, an amplifier, and a speaker.
That does noise cancellation, essentially.
Yes, it is set to that the speaker will null the sound field at the microphone.
Null the sound field at the mic. The entire sound field?
Yes. Well, within a range up to a couple hundred hertz.
Oh, okay.
And it does this because it's negative feedback. It's a servo.
That's what should be in airplanes. There should be noise reduction speakers in airplanes and cars. That would make the life
They would
better.
have to put in quite a few because, you know, the phase shift along the body of the plane and yada yada. It works. This has been done before. The biggest commercial success one that I know of was called the Phantom Acoustic Shadow. It was designed by Nelson Pass and produced by Phantom Acoustics. It was very well received. So it can work. And he had a demonstration which was pretty simple, but it did work.
I'll conclude the piece, and let's see if we can get it to.
No more V15s?
No more.
What?
There was a sign that said no more Shure V15 cartridges.
Right. They have stopped manufacturing them. And it's funny too, because there's a lot more stuff going on now in the vinyl world.
Yeah. Oy vey. V is for vey. Oy vey, vinyl.
You do not want to cancel, so you want to keep the 48 this way. You just want to bring all the resonance vibrations coming from
He's showing the source has a strong 48 hertz and some harmonics coming out of his signal source.
Anyway, Pro Tools was present, as they usually are at AES, and the Shure representative assured us that there will be no more V15 cartridges produced. As you remember, the last V15 sure was selling at over $300. So I guess they've decided to stop all that.
There are no Shure cartridges at all, not just the V15 series.
Oh, they've stopped all the Shure
Yep.
cartridges.
Yep.
Okay.
They get out of the cartridge business.
And they've gone pro audio, even bigger, I think. And this is just a panel of multiple diffusers, which I thought were beautifully done. And Zelia, which you may remember our BAS presentation last year, or was that last year? They were back again. This time the owner and the designers weren't there, but they had a nice booth service by these people here. And it makes me wonder, has the issue of surround sound gone to another level, or your their sound, whatever they call it, or you? And this is a combination booth that saves a lot of money. As you can see, a lot of manufacturers save money by piling up together. And
those were the
Richard
people who
talked
were
about headphones. I didn't know if he was talking about the way they sound or the new type of drivers they're having. Richard, which one were you?
I'm talking about, I've been listening to Soundcore and Apple AirPod Pro, Air Max Pro, and the new Bose noise cancellation headphones, and they all do things slightly differently. But first of all, the problem of deep bass from headphones has been solved. There's fantastic impression of deep bass on the way all of these headphones sound. And when you go beyond that, then they have different systems of putting in ambience and making it seem like it's three-dimensional. And the Apples are wonderful, but I think the Boses sound smoother on violins. But it's really terrific. I feel like I'm kind of outgrowing my stereo system, because it's so much easier just to wear it on my head as opposed to have a whole room. And it's very satisfying, for ordinary work. And it's great fun. I have this big screen to the projector, so I'm watching the Israeli invasion of Gaza in 4K on big screen with headphones and everything exploding in my ears. It's very entertaining if you don't mind Armageddon as an entertainment. But
Okay, well, the Audez headphones have been getting a lot of play because the Audez AUDEZ headphones.
AUDEZ?
Yeah, that's what he's got up on the screen.
Yeah, that's what's on the screen.
And that's a Che Guevara. Oh, I see. That is a mic. Oh, okay.
They're magnetic headphones.
Mm-hmm. And their drivers are planar drivers. They're claiming the reason why they sound so good is because of the planar driver. But of course, I don't know.
Are they open air? I suspect
Open
they
air.
are. Yeah.
You can't have good bass with an open air headphone.
Yes, you can.
Can you? What?
I've got some Sennheiser 660s and plenty of bass.
Okay, well, then you come next time. I'll show you. Bring your headphones.
Okay.
Okay, and because I think headphones, especially as we get older, I'm just preparing to move into the nursing home. What can I take? What can I take with me into the nursing home?
Okay.
Might be easier to bring the nursing home in.
No, it depends how much money. Sure, I can set up an IV station and everything, and
Okay, and as you heard earlier, we talked about the vintage company called Chefs, and of course, Telefunken was there.
Yeah, the guy there, by the way, that's Helmut Wittek.
That's Vitek, right?
Yep.
Who is
Great boy.
who?
Helmut Wittek. He's the one he's the boy soprano.
The boy soprano. Oh, that's great.
He was, I think, 12 or 13 when they did it.
Right.
With I think it's the Berlin Philharmonic with Lenny Bernstein conducting.
It was Vienna, I think.
Oh, it's the
Yeah.
Vienna. That's right. It's the Vienna Phil. But he doesn't sing anymore.
Right.
Where does he live in Germany, or where does he live?
Yeah, Chefs is a German company.
Does he live in Germany? Do you know?
Yes, he does.
Jawohl.
Karlsruhe.
Okay, and in case you've been
I
wondering,
was working that booth, by the way. I was there all 3
Oh.
days. I don't know why.
Wow.
I didn't see you.
Oh.
okay.
Wow. Maybe it was an imposter.
Okay, and in case you've been wondering, where's all that gorgeous sound come from in Star Wars like movies, here's a demonstration of how they create it on the computer.
Okay. Anybody's welcome in my house. You know, the last Monday of the month, I've had this audio salon for 40 years. We're all dying off. Anybody in the neighborhood's welcome. I think he dyed his hair.
And then it's harder to understand the warp part. But you have frequency shifting, so you keep the absolute frequency content the same and move that up. Pitch shifting, which means you keep the relative intervals the same, move it up or down. Then we got warp, which pretty much it has poles, and it takes a sort of frequency and it reflects the content that is above that back down, and the stuff that's below it back up. And on several poles, that's sort of what warp does. It's similar to sort of ring modulation or Nyquist reflections would work. So that sort of stuff. So yeah, some reboot here, some morph blending.
Wormhole.
So for my drum-based productions, just having something interesting that's not static, that's like half the game. So take this, even like small alterations of some sounds, and you can get some amazing soundscapes into this.
Okay, now we're on to the Geffen Hall, which we've already heard about earlier.
Geffen, yeah.
Richard, you were saying something about your Monday nights.
Oh yeah, I've had a music party or salon since 1970 something, the last Monday of every month, and many of us are diminishing in existence, but the salon marches on, and I have this projector and 27 channels of surround, just to create a feeling of the hall. I declared myself as an ambiophile, not an audiophile, because I don't think two speakers are enough. But we have, but Al, you're welcome. You've been there before, and Nick,
love it,
Dave, and stuff. So anybody's in the Boston area, I suppose we could broadcast it, but you can't really hear anything, so there's no point. But I think headphones are very instructive because they give you an experience that's very intimate, and you don't have to be in the middle of the hall. You can be just inside your head, and it actually is it can be a very satisfying listening experience if you don't play it too loud.
Okay. Anyway, this is David at Geffen Hall, and as you've heard earlier, the old hall set 2,738 people. The newer one is closer to 2,200. It was originally called the Philharmonic Hall and was renamed by Avery Fisher to the Avery Fisher Hall, who donated $10.5 million.
Which he made from hi-fi equipment.
Okay. And here's some brief construction information.
Lincoln Center is revealing details about the new David Geffen Hall. Lincoln Center says the renovation stayed within its $550 million budget. Renderings show a new welcome center. The lobby is now double the size of the old one. The concert hall stage for the New York Philharmonic has been moved forward by 25 feet. Seating capacity has been reduced, some 500 seats to 2,200, and sight lines and acoustics have been improved. The hall will reopen in October. Lincoln Center is revealing.
And here's an inside view. I wish John was around. I thought this seats with their colors of, those are flower petals. I thought it was a little bit ugly, but I don't know why they chose that combination.
They're supposed to be falling flower petals. I forget the exact reason, but it was a theme that was developed throughout the hall. The hall also has a whole bunch of extraneous spaces for smaller groups to perform, and also a large amount of office space for folks.
Okay, the hall, formerly known as Philharmonic, the original architect was Max Abramovitz in 1962. The most recent innovation was completed in 2022, led by two firms, and who redesigned the public spaces. It was renamed David Geffen Hall in 2015 after the Mongol donated $100 million. So if you want a hall named after yourself, just come up with more money.
Is that all wood paneling around the sides?
It's not exactly paneling. It is paneling, but if you'll notice, if you look at the lower picture, up by the exit sign, there appear to be what are, and indeed, waves in the wood to be used as diffraction systems.
What in the wood?
Right in the wood. They have molded the wood so it actually has a wave pattern in it that varies, and they use it as a diffractor.
Diffuser.
Or diffuser, right. In fact, the chief architect, Chris Blair, is the third from the right gentleman. And the rest of the gang there, John, I think, has his back to you. I think that's John Allen. And the guy, yep. I forget the other two fellows, but the guy doing the talking on the extreme left was the one, I think he's with the Philharmonic. And they were doing, this was part of the run through of it.
He led our tour.
Yeah. Well, they split it up into two groups, but he was leading one of the tours, and there was another tour that I think Chris handled, but I'm not sure.
And on the extreme right, of course, is David Weinberg.
Yeah.
That's great.
Really for anything.
Okay.
Did you turn on the sound in Zoom?
Here at the beginning of its life, and I think it's a privilege to be here.
I don't think you clicked sound in the share screen.
It's very dimly recorded. I can hear it a little bit.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you have to go back to stop sharing and make sure you click that so we hear the sound. Not we're hearing it indirectly through you.
Oh, okay.
No, it's not that. There's a box before you start sharing.
Setting in Zoom.
You got to stop sharing.
Okay.
And make sure you clicked to pass the sound through.
It's way along the bottom of the window usually.
It's usually near the lower left.
What is it? What is it called?
You have to stop sharing first.
Stop sharing.
Is it on this panel here? Or?
No, it's on the window that you're about to select for sharing.
Okay.
Do you see a question in the no, don't share it.
Okay.
Before you share the screen, before you click on the right that says share screen, on the left it says, shall I play the sound?
There's a stop share red. That's it.
Okay, and now hit
now somewhere on the screen on the bottom left is about sound.
You want original sound?
So select the window you want to show, and then it'll ask you, do you want to pass the sound through?
That's what I want to show. Can you see my cursor?
Look, I'm looking at share screen. See at the very bottom left corner, it says share sound. You see all your windows, and below it is the two options: share sound and optimize for video clip. You want to share sound. You should be on the screen that says select the window or an application you want to share.
Okay.
Are you on that window?
Yeah, here we go.
In
I'll
the
hit
bottom left
share
corner,
screen.
it says share sound. Click that.
Don't see it. Well, we don't have much more to go, so we'll just
All right, continue.
yeah, we'll just continue. I can't find that. I thought it was. So you haven't been able to hear any of the presentation?
No.
No, not much.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen that before, share sound, but I don't see it now.
If you've
No,
got this, do you have the Zoom screen in front of you?
Yeah,
You see the participants and stuff like that?
yeah,
You have the green share screen button on the bottom.
yeah.
Click that once.
There you go.
You should have a bunch of windows up that you can select to share.
New share, pause share, summary, caption, and
What?
When you hit the share screen button, it should show you the windows you have open for you to choose one to share. Don't you get that?
yeah, and that's what I do there.
Right.
Okay,
And
down the bottom of that window where you get
no, you don't click share yet. You got to click the window you want, and before you click on the lower right share, on the lower left, it says sound.
But the window he wants to share isn't on the grid. That's the attachment he's trying to share.
Let's just proceed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we should just proceed. It's almost over. The torture's almost over. Yeah.
The office.
I'll just skip by John. He's basically
I will just add that John Allen was selected to conclude the presentation. He was the last one who spoke, and he brought it all together, and he did it in about 2 minutes.
You see the share screen in the lower left corner?
Yeah.
That's what you got to click.
That's what got to click. Okay, okay. Now optimize the video clip. Okay, let's try it.
Now go to the right and click share.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, John insisted that both groups, because we had separated into two groups, meet at the end of the walkthrough and the tour so that they could hear together some of the commentary that was then presented.
Okay, here's his closing remarks.
The office, which is for a hall that's used for multiple things, kind of rare.
With no microphone in the vicinity.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Yeah.
We can hear all the ambience in the hall.
And I think.
Oh, really?
You are here at the beginning of its life, and
I will add that stage crew came in the last few minutes and started moving things around and setting things up and
rearranging and setting up the stage.
kind of got in the way.
There was also a fellow that came in and started practicing on, I believe it was a, xylophone or something similar.
So they made the shape a little more reminiscent of Vienna and Boston.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's also a whole panel, I believe it's on the first balcony where you see the two black squares. I think that's it, or maybe the one above it. It's a projection booth that literally slides out and has a Barco light cannon so they can actually project movies and do live sound with movies.
It's in the second balcony.
Yeah, I can't remember off the top of my head, but again, you can see all the side ripples that are there in the walls for the diffusion, and they're mounted, I believe they're glued to the concrete housing of the actual building, so they don't give. They're not base absorbers anymore.
So it took him a half a century to figure out a classic design works.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's them or there was a lot of political infighting apparently going on all over the place when they initially started it, and it continues to this day.
They wanted to have their cake and eat it too. They wanted as much revenue as possible with as many seats as possible with good acoustics.
As good as possible.
Okay, Nick, I'm finished.
Okay.
Is it time to say goodbye?
You can leave anytime you want.
I feel guilty.
That's good.
Well, one of the things I did happen to go, like Dave Weinberg, as we're both AES Life members now. I went to the whole show. And one of the major things that was kind of the theme of the show in a lot of areas was immersive sound, which takes it one step beyond just having an ambience. They want you to be totally immersed in the sound field, and
that's what headphones do.
Well, they're steering towards 7.1.4 arrangement, which is, I guess, what Dolby Atmos uses.
Yep.
And everybody's trying to figure out how to use Dolby Atmos. They're going through now what people went through when stereo was first introduced. How do we do this? How do we represent things? And how do we present it in a theater or an auditorium or even on headphones? And they still haven't figured out how to do it yet. So there's a lot of variation. And it's nice to listen on headphones, but it also depends an immense amount on how the hell the thing was recorded to begin with.
But you can, on headphones, you can actually hear how it was recorded, as opposed to in a room where you're hearing the speakers.
Well, I've always said that the room is the 2,000-pound elephant in anybody's listening room, because that impacts the sound, even when it's being created. Hence, Geffen Hall.
Yep.
Okay, you want to start, Nick?
I would like to.
Oh, sorry.
I didn't know you were talking.
I thought we were at the conclusion.
Can anybody see my shared screen?
Yes.
I can see AES New York City. Click to add text.
There you go. One of the things I love about New York is the architecture. And they got crazy buildings here. I can't explain it, but I love them.
Yeah, that's great.
As Alvin said, normally the NAB show and the AES show are there for the same time, but we were there on Friday and the NAB show ended on Thursday. So we didn't get to see stuff from Broadcast World.
Yeah, they did have an interesting twist, though. Anybody who attended the AES or the NAB convention was allowed to cross over and go view the other side of the aisle. So AES members were going to the NAB stuff, and NAB members were coming over and looking at the AES stuff.
Yeah, we did that last year. I mean, that's what we expected to do this year, but
yeah, it was pretty full up. The biggest, probably the largest display, they must have had literally about a 50 to 70 foot square foot length squared side of the auditorium, of the display space that was used by NAB, and the people, the B&H Photo Video must have had at least 30 sales reps in the place, talking about everything from microphones to video cameras to still cameras to lighting systems to you name it, they do it. There were also numerous other video presenters, but they seem to be mostly tied into networking type systems that are being developed to basically provide integrated video productions from all over the place, across a large building or across the world, and how to integrate it and how to pull it all together.
So, Nick, what did you get from this?
From what?
From what you saw. What did you take away from attending the meetings?
The presentation.
Anything gladden your heart beside the architecture?
Not especially. This was a very meager show. I'm sorry, the AES section was maybe half of what it was last year,
Wow.
I don't know why.
And they charged $25, and last year was free.
No, well, it's $25. We went as non-press and non-privileged and stuff, exhibits only, because we were so late in registering. If we registered back in August, I think it was, we could have gone for free. At any rate, in previous years, I have gone as press and been able to get into everything, and that was better. I went to some, presentations on modeling subwoofer responses in auditoriums, and they modeled it and they tested it, and the agreement was extraordinary. And there were lots of great things that we couldn't see this time. We were delayed by the bus almost a couple hours, I think, and we got there at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and we had to get to Geffen Hall by 4 o'clock, and it only left us a couple hours max to cover the exhibit floor. So it was kind of rushed. Anyway, a nice cast microphone shield. They use them when they're recording vocals.
This was at the Javits Center?
Yes.
Yes.
This is an end-on, if you will, picture of the sound isolation door that Alvin talked about. STI, I think, was the company. And a sound absorber with an interesting construction. It's pretty thin. It has some diffusive elements. They routed out those channels in a back panel and covered it with some absorption and a grill cloth. And that's the company, Proso Acoustic. Triad Magnetics is back. I used their transformers to build Southwest Technical Products Tiger power amps. Maybe you remember those from the 70s.
Yeah,
And,
still have them.
Sorry?
I still have a couple.
So do I. I have a Tigersaurus as well.
You go. I'm getting dizzy. So, see you. Goodbye, everybody. Nice day.
Okay.
Take care.
All right. See you later. As Alvin alluded to, this combination sort of display, Augsburger is an older studio monitor maker, and they're kind of making a comeback, introducing some newer technology, but it looks a lot like older technology. These are some of those absorbers and diffusers that Alvin was talking about. The Shep's, the reception booth here, and their most famous series, I think, the Colette, is what many recording studios and halls use. So this is an example of all the different pieces. It's a system that's got capsules and amplifiers and cables and stand adapters and all kinds of stuff.
The latest stuff from Shep's, they've taken what's on the right side, the what they call the
CMC6.
The CMC6, which is all solid state. And if you go all the way over to on the bar to the left side, that little tiny thing is now what they're making as a replacement for it.
I'm sorry, it's not a replacement, it's an alternative.
Well, it's an alternative, right?
That's the CMC1 series.
Yeah.
All of the small amplifiers on that bar are CMC1. There are 5 different versions of them.
Yep.
I should explain, I've been a technical consultant and a tech writer and translator for them for nearly 50 years, and I was at this booth working the whole time. I'm a little surprised not to be in the pictures, but I might have stepped away for a minute.
Is this the anglicized German word Schirps?
Scheps. It's a name. It's the last name of the co-founder.
So it's umlaut O.
Yes, OE and umlaut O are the same thing in German.
It was a Willy Scheps or Willy Scheps.
No, it's Dr. Karl Scheps.
Karl Scheps, right.
Mm-hmm.
As I said, Telefunken is still around and still present.
What do you mean? It's a company that has licensed the brand name. They're not, the original company went out of business in the 1980s.
Oh,
Oh, that's news to me. When I talked to these guys a couple of years ago, they didn't tell me that. They implied that they were the same company throughout, that the Beatles had used their microphones and stuff like that.
Nonsense.
Well,
Nonsense.
that's what they told me.
I'm a little surprised to hear that because normally, well, anyway, it is not so. There are about 80 different companies worldwide that license the name Telefunken from the holding company that owns the brand name. That is all that there is of the original Telefunken company.
Huh.
If you want to make handbags or, scarves, Telefunken, you can apply to them and pay them money, and you can call your product a Telefunken.
It's like the name Polaroid.
I don't know, but it's a trademark, and that's an intellectual property that is bought and sold.
Well, I can only tell you what I got. I think it was 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know the company. It has never had any relationship to the original Telefunken company.
Huh. Okay. This was an interesting display. They sell custom ear molds, basically. And they said you can get it made by an audiologist, which is what I do. He pumps goo into your ear. Or they have an app that will scan your ear mold, your pinna with an iPhone and produce something they claim is compatible and good sounding and all that. I find that amazing. I don't think I'd ever do it.
Well, I read recently there is actually some sort of like a peristaltic flow in the inner ear that's continually cleaning it out. That's why earwax accumulates sometimes. So you're actually impeding the natural cleaning of the ear canal if you go around wearing ear pods all the time.
Yeah, but I think the thing is that they're not used that many hours in a day.
I see people that put it in when they wake up and take it out when they go to sleep.
Well, that's too bad for them. I know I can't wear mine for more than a few hours. I get sweaty and uncomfortable. So, but I just found it impressive that these guys claim that they can scan your ear with an app and send the file to someplace which will make an earplug or ear mold, whatever, that goes into your ear and works and is comfortable. It's not something I do, but I thought the technology is impressive.
Yeah, if they had a laser scanner built into your phone, it might work.
I don't know how they do it. I talked to the Shure people unofficially because they are the pro sound, headphones, in-ear monitors, microphones, that kind of stuff. They said the V15 won't come back because the tooling has been destroyed or lost. They used to have a special way of making their little stepped boron cantilevers and stuff like that. Apparently they didn't care to preserve that. So unfortunately, it won't be coming back. I got a couple of pictures I took of Geffen Hall here. A couple of things I'd like to point out. Can you see my cursor?
Yes.
Those are the molded wood sides that he was talking about. I'd like to point out that those are the same from top to bottom, and so they are one-dimensional only. And I found that choice to be maybe a little limiting. I don't know. This stuff is on the surface is a twisted panel of wood, and that's how they achieve diffusion with that kind of thing. And I believe behind this stuff here, which are just wood slats, and behind here they have the heavy cloth panels that they can drop down to change the reverb time, the absorption in the room.
This
they
looks
also
like a
have-
hall I would have expected in Scandinavia.
They
Yeah.
also have side curtains that can be lowered from the ceiling.
Right, but they don't have those in view here. These are these
No, but the
adjustable
side curtains extend out into the auditorium along the balconies.
Yeah, but they didn't show
No,
them to us.
they didn't rig them because they didn't want to. They have computer setups apparently and they're still tweaking them for the best acoustics depending upon what's being performed in the hall. So they're
Yep.
still adjusting things.
How come they have all that exposed theater lighting?
It's a multi-purpose hall. They want to be able to do like rock and roll shows, which use a lot of spots and stuff like that. It's just their choice.
Yeah, if you watch the Vimeo thing, they have a number of various types or examples of the types of things they plan to do in the hall, and some of which they already have, because the hall has been open now for over a year.
They do have speaker clusters hanging there. I believe they leave them there always. I believe they're not always in use. This is the back of the hall. They planned for a third balcony, but decided not to put seats there and not to use it, though it is accessible to members of the hall. I don't know if that's during performances here. You see my cursor?
Yeah.
This is where the video booth drops out of.
Mm-hmm.
It comes forward. It doesn't actually drop down. It comes out from the back wall.
This is the panel that covers it.
Yeah.
This is Alan Southwick.
Yeah. Taking his own video. I actually shot a circular video of the room with my phone.
Yep. I found the seats to be a little stiff.
Me too.
How come they didn't offset them? Most modern theaters.
Yeah, I didn't understand that either. They do in the back, it looks like, but coming down to the front, it is a sloped floor.
Yep.
So it's a gentle slope. It's not real steep. But that may be the reason why they didn't do that. And again, they're trying to maximize seating in the hall if they can in the space.
Yep. Personally, I found the aspect of the hall to be too wide.
It was much worse before.
Yeah, but it's to me it felt like it's a little shallower than Symphony Hall and a little wider.
Exactly. Yep, that's.
And
I was in the old hall, and that was my impression.
Yeah, and I wish they could have tweaked it more. You know, I'm going to hope to go to concerts there and see what it's like. The speakers, the people who are talking on the stage, they sounded a little chesty to me.
I still think New York is showbiz, not classical music.
Well, apparently they want to do it all with this hall. I mean, we'll see what it's like. Reserve judgment. And here he is finishing up his talk. It's going to be interesting to see how it works out. That's it.
I think without a doubt, it probably is an improvement over what's gone before. How much of an improvement? I don't know.
Yeah, I can't say. I hope so. Finally,
why don't you commission a performance and have us all there?
Who are you talking to?
You're the boss.
Yeah, me commission a performance?
Well, either that or set up a deal. And in fact, we were invited to come and listen to a concert. But of course, they want you to pay to come in. But perhaps maybe we could set up something, but it would mean people would have to come in for a specific venue type concert, I suppose.
Well, I
do it jointly with other audio societies.
Yeah. And get the AES involved as well. Because I'm sure there's plenty of people in New York that would like to hear some of the acoustic characteristics of it, that don't want to pay the 50 or whatever bucks it costs per seat for even the cheap seats.
I'm guessing it's probably a lot more than that.
Yeah, they're probably starting around 75 and going up, is my guess, but I don't know. I haven't looked at trying to get a seat.
So why speculate? Take a look. It's not that expensive to get into to Geffen Hall. It is not hard.
Oh.
Well, Ken Wax, would you like to work on that?
Me? No, I'm not in New York.
Ken Wax.
I'm not in New York either. I don't know who to contact.
Well, on my part, I'm just gonna, look at the performances that are coming and try and buy a good seat for a performance that's far enough out there that I can get a good seat for.
Do they have anything like TKTS where they sell day of at discount?
I have no idea.
I don't know. You'd have to, they probably have a website. There is a New York Philharmonic website. You can probably check that out. Or you can just go into the lobby and sit and watch the concert in the lobby. But that doesn't give you a flavor for what's going on in the hall. I did notice when we were there, they were setting up stuff for, I guess, some kind of performance of some sort. But the guy who's been busy doing the live recordings of the hall for the archive purposes for the Philharmonic or the Lincoln Center group had quite a few mics all over the place on the stage. And it was certainly not, I guess, what you'd call a purist microphone setup. They had probably 9 or 10 mics that were scattered all over the place within the orchestra seats and so forth. So I'm not sure how that, you'll pardon the phrase, plays out, but time will tell on that too.
Okay, Nick, sounds like that's it. It's 4:38.
No, that's not it.
Okay.
I found a website claiming $15 tickets to the Philharmonic.
Ah, they're almost like rush seats. Anything they can do to get people in.
Oh yes.
Oh, this nonsense. Yes.
Yeah, just an interesting thing to point out. Like, if you watch eBay bids, the price of these things are coming up, and it's a trailing bid kind of system. The only interesting thing about this bidding system is that these items, the first 100 items, are going to end at the same time. Here, this is the time where it ends, except if people keep on bidding. And if people keep on bidding, they keep on extending the time. So they're really trying to suck the most money out of us that they can.
Oh, yeah.
So I expected, this was his thing, and it wasn't his family's thing, and so they want to get rid of this, or maybe they can't afford to keep it, or maybe they have to sell the house. I don't know.
Yeah, you had it in a pretty big room, as I recall. Didn't we have a video for that at one of the last BAS meetings?
Yeah, we had a video about his system.
Yeah, and it certainly was a tweak setup.
I think it's just kind of interesting to see how the dissolution of that is happening.
So we can all think about that with our own systems.
Yep.
When we're gone, what the heck is going to happen to all this stuff?
Well, it ends like in the last week of November, and you got to pick it up on the 30th, I think.
Oh.
In the video, he expressed his wishes that it not be broken up after he died, but sold as a unit.
Well, these items are presented as individual items, but that cluster of units that I referred to is all of his main listening room. And, they're trying to get the maximum for each unit and trying to get somebody who's going to overbid for the whole lot. So good luck to them. I mean, there's tons of stuff here, but it's true value. Auctions tend to, over-evaluate things. So
Yeah,
we'll see
he's
what
got a lot of
happens.
his workshop stuff there too, from where he actually developed and built some of the stuff.
There's some, but I didn't see like a whole bunch of tools or anything like that.
No,
You want a bit on the
It's odd.
screwdrivers?
odds and ends, pieces of the materials that he used to build things.
Yeah, I mean, some nice chunks of wood would be nice. You know, good wire or whatever. I mean, if you look through this stuff later on, there's bunches of drivers, a bunch of JBL drivers, and ScanSpeak, and you know, other stuff. So, all depends what you're into. I suspect it's not going to go terribly cheap, though. And that's it.
So when did the fellow die?
A few months ago, I think.
Oh,
I think it was more like a couple of years ago.
That long?
Yeah, and that it took them this long to get everything labeled and the auction up and running.
2022. So he passed in 2022. Give some thought to your own systems.
yeah. And who the hell's gonna try and sell them, or what you're gonna do with them?
Try to get
By
rid
the
of.
way, I have a friend who has a very highly recommended amplifier from ATI Audio, who is in the market for selling a 2-channel version. He's paid well over $2,500, I think, for it, but that's what he's asking for it. And it's a fellow I actually he helped mentor me back in the day. He's 83 now, and he's looking at basically selling a lot of his equipment, microphones, and so forth. He at one point actually had a full-blown Westrex cutting head and the Scully lathe in his living room. He used to cut his own discs, and he made a living at it, basically, but I think he started off pretty well off to begin with.
Yeah. How do you make a small fortune in audio?
Well, I don't think he made a small fortune in audio. I think he inherited a goodly amount of it, but I really don't know the backstory.
You start with a large fortune.
Yeah. And eventually it becomes a small fortune.
You got it. All right. Anybody else got anything to say?
Yeah, if you're interested in the amp, if you look online at ATI Audio, they're pretty impressive amplifiers, balanced systems, et cetera, et cetera. So if you're interested in it, give me a shout and I can put you in touch. I know he's recovering from some kind of medical procedure in the hospital, but he's very interested and can be reached via cell phone.
Well, good luck to him.
And you'll need 2 people to move it. The 2-channel amp weighs just under 100 pounds. I think it's 96 pounds. And if you go for the 7-channel upgraded mod, which he doesn't have, but which you might be able to get from ATI Audio, I believe that's just around $8,000. It's a beast. It's a big, big brute of an amplifier, and they do a whole bunch of really unusual stuff. Has almost a theoretical limit on the noise.
So it's about time to call it a day.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Saturday. That's the day.
Yep. I don't know. Digital amps are so cheap now. Well, not necessarily digital, but Class D saturating amps.
Yeah.
That you got to wonder about spending money on the heavyweight analog amps. No.
Dual power supplies that both have to be plugged into. It's all in the same chassis, but if you get above 2 channels, I believe, or maybe 3 channels, it has dual power cords. Or both power supplies that are within the system. It's all modular. It's rack mounted type thing. But it weighs the full blown 7-channel version weighs something like 150 pounds. It's big. You can look at it online on ATI Audio. I think it's Audio Technologies Incorporated, and the guy is in the process of moving his factory into Las Vegas, last I heard. John Allen is the guy that put us onto it. He's jumping up and down about how good they are, and apparently they are very impressive because his new theater installations are using them.
Well, good luck to him.
Yep. Anyway, good to see everybody.
We had good attendance. Thank you all.
Hasta la vista, gang.
Take care.
You too.